We are recording to the cloud. This is, I believe it's week 12. Yeah, okay.
Yes.
That means after this, we have 3 weeks left. And so we'll have Daria Vaughn with us next week at our normal time, 7 p.m. She's working in Indianapolis and is in the corporate sector and consulting. She was doing instructional design. The week after that, we have Jesse Yee from London, actually living near Stonehenge, who will be taping a session with me, not on Monday night, actually not till Friday of that week at like early morning or something crazy. We're just going to record it. I don't know if I'll even invite students, but people want to come. She's working at Box right now. She worked at Motorola and Vodafone and Genesis and a couple other places, and she's an IST alum from 20 years ago. So I'll be recording that. So I'll be making a playlist up for the class for all the recordings. And I'm actually thinking of not having any guests next fall. I'm going to use the recordings from the last 2 semesters and do everything asynchronous discussions. Go back to Canvas and not do blogs either. I'm thinking about switching the class around quite a bit and not having any synchronous sessions, and just see how that goes back to an async. But maybe I'll have to get opinions of the students in the class. If you have an opinion, send it to me on email, because that's what I'm toying around with right now, to reuse the playlist from previous semesters and to do something with them. But maybe we can do something really creative and having students bring in guests or interview people and post them or something, rather than me having the guests coming every week. But anyway, it's just something different, because it gets a little redundant after doing it. This course, almost every semester for the past few years. I only had a break 1 or 2 semesters, so something new, something to look forward to. And then the week after that, we'll just share our final projects and what people worked on. So really, the only normal session will be next week, Monday at 7 o'clock. If that's normal, I don't know. So really important is to go to the guest for tonight, and that is Bandura, my friend. And he actually, is someone who I could say was my friend, because I actually introduced him at Indiana University when he gave speeches. He used to come to IU. And this may be a 2-parter, so we'll do a hard stop at 12:30 and then pick back up next week. I'm in the midst of submitting a grant, and I have to approve some forms. We'll have a 15-minute break when Maria comes here. So Christian, just let me know when 12:25 is, and we'll see how far we gotten. But Bandura was on her, thank you. But Bandura was on the board of trustees for the School of Education, would come every year and give talks, live talks to our grad students in Ed Psych and for other places, and sign books. I got to introduce him once, about 15 to 20 years ago. I'd say back about 2000, it was 30 years ago, 2003-ish. And I introduced him as retired. And he pulled me aside and said, I'm not retired. And he worked another 20 years at Stanford before he passed away at age, I think, 100. You can look this up, Christian. I think it was 100. Maybe he got close to 101. Jerome Bruner was also close to 100. I think Bandura actually made it, but you can check. So he was a friend of IU. He was in the 1993 celebration for the new building, the School of Ed building. He was one of the people who got honorary doctorates. It was in March of 1993. It was 6 months after the building was built. And so he was at IU many times and is a friend of IU. And I consider him to be one of the last living legacies, or one of the most famous people in psychology, who just unfortunately passed away last year or the year before that. So look at historical foundations, the concepts, ideas about modeling and vicarious reinforcement and self-efficacy and so forth. But Bandura grew up in Canada on a farm, and got interested in psychology, went off to places like Iowa before ending up at Stanford, where he spent over 60 years of his career, well over 60 years. So imagine that. I'm 31 at IU, my 34th year. I don't know if I'll make it 60 years at IU. I'd be in, people put me in a home of some kind. But Bandura is one who combined behaviorism and cognitivism together. So back in the heyday of behaviorism, I guess you would consider Bandura a rebel of sorts, because he was embracing information processing theories as well as behavioral theories. Started off in the behaviorist camp. And if you read about the Bobo doll experiments, where the kids watch other kids beating up the Bobo dolls, or watch adults beating up the Bobo dolls, and they violence begets violence, and they start beating up clowns and other dolls and other things. So he was looking at that, and he was trying to explain human behavior, if you will, through a social cognitive approach. And his approach is extremely popular today, because you really put an emphasis on vicarious reinforcement, looking at how others solve problems or others do things. He said if learning, what happened that wouldn't include modeling, then we'd be getting in traffic accidents when we learn how to drive, because we wouldn't watch someone else and reflect on what they did. If we did everything from a direct experience of sorts, we'd have a lot more accidents in effect. Learning would be extremely laborious, not to mention hazardous, if we solely rely on our actions. But most human behavior and functioning is performed through modeling, through observing others, and we code that in our brain. So the coding happens, wiring happens internally. So he likes to look at both the internal wiring and the external behaviors. And social cognitive definition of learning is an internal mental process that may or may not be reflected in immediate behavioral change, according to Bandura. So a learner can abstract a wide range of information from observing others and the decisions that they make about what to do and what not to do. And Bandura wasn't strict behaviorist, because he did believe in chance factors, fortuitous events that might happen along the way, unintended, unexpected. The humans, he said, have the capacity to act freely. We cannot just be controlled like B.F. Skinner and Watson wanted to shape and ship people out and predetermine what Christian will be and what Nick will be and what I will be. But yet he believes in some volition, some choice, some human decision making that impacts our personality and who we are and what we will become. So the environment influences our behavior, but isn't the end all and be all. He has a theory called reciprocal determinism, which involves both cognition and behaviors. It's a triarchic theory, in effect. Learning does not equal performance of behavior. Instead, it's internal codes of behavior are learned and may be reused later. So it's kind of, in effect, embracing schema theory and embracing behaviorism and cognitivism. It's a three-part. It's a triarchic reciprocity model of causality. It's called reciprocal determinism. The internal wiring in the person, the external behaviors, and our nurturing, our support structures in one's environment. And so the role of the person is, we think, we believe, we have expectations and emotions, and our beliefs about what we can do and what we can't do, what's known as self-efficacy, our beliefs about how we will perform in a certain situation in one's environment. And so that becomes a crux of a lot of Bandura's theoretical approaches. So he has a behavioral model, and he also accounts for the internal wiring or internal processes. And the changes in behavior might come from direct reinforcement personally to ourselves, as well as from external, as well as from vicariously watching others. And then we also have to take into account one's perceived self-efficacy to perform a particular action. So we can have different behavioral models in our society. Mass media presents us with all sorts of pop media and pop culture people that we might aspire to be like, or basketball coaches when we watch the NCAA championships or tennis championships or whatever. So the primary function of these behavioral models is for us to observe how they behave, and that's why we want our heroes to act good at all times, because there's a lot of people counting on them and looking up to them and thinking about how they would perform based on what they see their role models doing actually in society. And so they can demonstrate new behaviors, and you can demonstrate them in the mass media, in the news, and so forth. And that those behavioral modelings could weaken a particular behavior a person has. If we all go off to Boy Scout camp and just see other people doing good things for their grandmothers in the neighborhood, then we might internalize that as action that we should take part in. But if we go off to Boy Scout camp and kids get into fights, which they've been known to do, which I probably did a few times in Boy Scout camp, and we start internalizing, as long as we don't beat Christian up too badly, we're allowed to go back. Repeated exposure to verbal or physical abuse by authority figure weakens the restraints. So there are several videos that I normally show in this episode. And if you go to watch the 8-pack of videos that I've got pre-recorded, you'll see a whole series of videos where if a sharp-dressed man walks across the street who has a suit on against a flashing red light, other people will follow him or her. If a poorly dressed person or a homeless person walks across the street and the red light's going off, it says, do not walk, no, will follow with the person. So there's also the notion of who's the model out there? Is it a credible model? Is it a relevant model? Is it prestigious? Are they believable? So all these things are criteria that you weigh, that you might have internalized before you decide to follow in that particular behavior. That they help you gain attention, in effect. So if we go to Girl Scout camp, or we go to young women in tech, and we see famous people who are modeling that technology, or experts or teachers and so forth, or you're seeing someone successful or get awards for women in technology and robotics and so forth, you might aspire to science and STEM and so forth. If you see the leaders of that particular institute or initiative or project or school presenting on this to other youth, the younger people might aspire to be like them and to perform like them and to get involved. If you see an actress or an actor or a dancer or a musician in a TED Talk, and you see all these wonderful things that they've done, or you hear about them, you might aspire to be just like them. There are many TED Talk people I look at and I think about, wow, that's really cool, or CNN or BBC or other shared online video channels. The web is now not just Wikipedia, it's Videopedia with all sorts of video models out there. And I'll get back to that in a second. People are learning all sorts of new skills through video, through shared online video. And it's something that I've done research on, in fact, over time. Learning does not need to occur through direct experience then. It can happen through watching others, vicariously getting shaped. If I praise Christian for being the first to show up today, maybe more people will try and beat Christian next time, so they get praise and they get points and they get cookies and whatever it is I might be, or popcorn or whatever it is I'm handing out. Bandura stated that a person can learn things simply by watching and noting the behavior of others. So if you're, in North Korea, for instance, and you see other people who've escaped and have successful lives, you might too try to go over the cold, frigid waters in northern Korea into China and escape through Thailand and Vietnam and Laos, or maybe not. But at least you need some models and people talking about their escapes and what they did, so that you have the models to go from and think about your life is maybe not hopeless and you have some opportunities to follow in their footsteps and so forth. Or if you see female scientists in physics, in biology, chemistry getting recognized. There's a woman now who's posting women scientists in Wikipedia, because really it was Wikipedia didn't have a number of they had a small number of women in science in their pages. And so some people are trying to do something about that. And so as to get, again, the role models out there for the possibilities in terms of employment. So in terms of Bandura's model, there are internal processes. We have to attend to the experts, the people that are popular in pop culture and so forth. We have to observe their behavior of some point. Then we have to retain it. We have to retain that internal video or impression of them. So there's first is attention, then there's retention, then there's production, producing that particular behavior that they might have performed in front of us, whether it's just shooting a bow and arrow or golfing, or it might be playing badminton or golf or whatever. And then you have to be motivated to use it. You cannot just attend to it and retain it and produce it, but you want to produce it. So motivation is a key aspect. So those four things are typically what Bandura was focused on in terms of the criteria underlining the successful recreation of particular behavior that you saw vicariously in one society that you might want to imitate. Now, I'm not going to imitate skydiving or bungee jumping or some other techniques that we might see, some other talents and skills that we might see in society, different competencies, if you will. But we can be motivated both vicariously and directly in our environment, from our teachers and from ourselves, as well as watching how others are incentivized or motivated. Now, this is not something I'm going to necessarily do tomorrow or the next day or the day after that. But if enough of these crazy people stand on, wherever that might be in DC, I would guess, city. I see the Capitol in the distance there, I think. But yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So modeling is a key component of social cognitive theory, SCT, that in effect helps us move Bandura from a behavioral model where they didn't open up the black box, the brain, to now accounting for the thinking as well as the actions, as well as the support structure in one's environment. So Bandura in the late 50s looked at television violence and into the 60s, and looked at kids reenacting behaviors that they might see, like the Bobo doll experiments, where someone might be in the room beating up on the Bobo doll, and the kids are looking through in a mirror, a two-way mirror, and then they're allowed to enter the room and they go in and beat up the darn Bobo doll. And then eventually Bandura brought in a real clown into the room, and the kids were beating up on the real clown. And so if you think about Grand Theft Auto and Halo and all these other games, bang 'em up, shoot 'em up games, that gaming companies say, oh, it doesn't influence actions in society. Actually, there's decades of research that shows that, in fact, that does. People don't necessarily satiate after playing Halo. I don't know what the latest games are, being up, shoot 'em up games, but when Angry Birds came along and Friendville and Farmville, I was hopeful for the world would change and move away from the bang 'em up, shoot 'em up games to more social kindness games. So, what the research shows that the kids did reproduce a great deal of aggression compared to the control groups, markedly so. And so there's research. If you watch the other pre-recording, I go through actually the research data on it. I've got about 10 minutes left before I need to take a break. So I'm not going to show the videos. I'm not going to show the data. I'm just doing a cursory overview a little bit. So Bandura then responded to the criticism that the Bobo dolls are supposed to be beat up. So then he brought in live people into the room and saw the kids were kicking and scratching and beating and punching and using little hammers on them. So yeah, it happens on real world people, not just the plastic dummies that were provided initially in the first studies. So the effects of modeling are then learning new behaviors. It could be learning new vocabulary by watching TV with subtitles underneath in different languages. And so we might learn a language, we might learn new motor skills or athletic skills. Again, we might learn how to shoot hoops based on how Connecticut played last night, not on how San Diego State shot hoops last night. I didn't watch much of the game. It was a kind of a boring game. I turned on for a minute or two. Actually, it was kind of nice not having to watch the NCAA game because I got a great due tomorrow. And there wasn't much sleep to be had last night, maybe an hour or two. So we might not only learn new behaviors, but facilitate new responses, new behaviors, whether we're learning how to dance, tango dancing, or learning how to play with others in a preschool setting. It also explains what going along with the crowd might be. We go to watch the Yankees play in Yankee Stadium, and everyone starts booing the Boston Red Sox or some other team. We start booing as well. We join in the crowd in that, or go to Broadway plays and clap when everyone else is clapping, even though we didn't think it's necessarily the best part, and so forth. Modeling can also help inhibit behaviors. If you see Nick getting punished for certain things, well, I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna abstain from whatever it is that Nick did, whether it's coming to class late or making fun of a peer or talking back to a teacher or ripping up my homework, whatever he did. And it also explains ripple effects. Like I said, in a movie where there's a soundtrack in the background, so you might start laughing when you hear other people laugh and so forth. And there's also ripple effect in terms of seeing someone who's passionate and inspirational and emotional, like an expert or a well-known figure in society might be, and giving a speech about, an inspirational speech about their life and so forth. I've read 5 books in a row about ultra marathon runners, and I'm just totally inspired by these people. One guy ran 226 miles without, taking a break, in effect, other than to bathroom break and getting pizza on the way, just eating while he ran. I mean, these guys are crazy. And so, I'm inspired all the time. And there's that, we're watching others, learning about others, reading about others, hearing about others, and the talents and the skills that they have, and the awards that they got, and accomplishments and acknowledgments. So there's an active mastery experiences where learners' previous success at something gets you to want to do it again. So if you're successful at qualifying exam, Nick, are you an EDD student, Nick? You're muted. Are you a master's?
Okay, can you refresh me on what EDD means again?
Are you a doctoral student or a master's student?
Oh, right. Sorry. I was thinking in terms of like student descriptive abbreviations. No, I'm a master's student.
So if Nick was a master's student, all of a sudden he does a final project did some on the fly research in the community, and the professor gave him a high score. Well, he might want to do research again and apply for the EDD doctoral program to do more research. And so an active mastery experience means building on previous successes, learning by doing along the way. Whereas vicarious, you're getting new behaviors by watching someone else perform behavior, right? Observing others, as opposed to directly doing it yourself. A third way in which we're
often 25.
Thank you. A third way in which we're often influenced in terms of self-efficacy is through verbal persuasion, listening to others, and having people encourage us. Nick, you should get into the EDD program. Christian might say it too. Christian, go ahead and tell Nick he needs to be in the EDD program.
You need to be in the EDD program, Nick.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's what I did, master's into the EDD.
Even better, you got a peer who did the thing that you're doing, the same route. So he's a credible, peer. He's a credible role model, because he followed a path that could be similar to you, right? And you can learn from his successes as well as failures. So verbal persuasion might be something that's extremely important, as well as how you feel that day, your physiological state. Are you, overwhelmed and stressed out? And, have you got a grant due tomorrow and one was due yesterday? I got one yesterday, so that might determine whether I say yes to someone saying, could you give a keynote talk in Turkey on Thursday? No, I don't think so. And I had several in the past couple of days to China, to Turkey. I forget what the other, but yeah, it's just no. Well, maybe. So then there's consequences. Vicarious reinforcement conveys information about behaviors that are appropriate in which settings. So kind of have a schema for when you can display that. And then there's also punishment when things are inappropriate. And so again, it builds on behaviorism, right? Because punishment and reinforcement, all these terms. So Bandura really is eclectic, if you will, right? He's embracing a kind of a learning environment model, which is R622, which I think Nick had with me last semester. And it's about creating the space, the social space for learning to occur, and taking into account what the behaviors of our participants in that setting and other people and so forth. It's all encompassing. It reflects kind of all human behavior, thoughts, attitudes, emotions, volitions. In effect, kind of Bandura and Vygotsky were both trying to create eclectic models that understand the total human psychology. And it's hard creating grandiose theories of psychology that incorporate everything, because there's always exceptions to the rules, right? And things that don't pan out exactly right. So, but there might be self-imposed consequences that you might set for yourself, not meeting your own goals, not meeting your own standards, not meeting your own criteria, in effect. So the humans have the rare ability to self-reinforce and to scrutinize our own efforts and to meta-monitor what we've succeeded in and what we haven't. That sets us apart from other species. So again, models have to have a high level of skill or different skill than us in order to be effective. So there's a lot faster runners than me. I ran today, 3 years, 1,108 days or some odd number. I don't even know what day it was, but I'll look it up now. So Saturday was 1,107, 8, 9, yeah, 1,109. So yeah, just don't bonk, don't hit the wall. But they also have to be respected and popular and prestigious, or the more prestigious, respected, and popular, the better. Unfortunately, actually, in some ways, because we tend to only aspire to be like our TV heroes and movie heroes and so forth, not all the ed tech heroes of the world, like my friend Kidchuck at North Texas, or my friend Pierre in the middle there on the left-hand side, Pierre Dillenberg from Sweden, and my friend from Finland at the bottom, and others. You know, you don't hear often about the leaders of the field of IST or learning, design, and technology, but they're out there. There are a lot of them. Once you get into the field, you will start hearing about them. We've brought some into this class, Dr. Cosma, for instance, a couple of weeks ago in here. So this young kid was the world junior and got 2
1
minutes
minute
left.
to 30 past.
Yeah, thanks. So young Subham Jaglan is the world's junior golf champion. And they went twice, and he was like age 9 or 10 when he won this. And he practiced on his father's sugarcane fields in India. And they said, what else did you do? And so, Nick, what do you think he did? What was the other thing that he did to make him a successful golfer?
Did he watch other people who were successful?
Yeah. Like, who would he watch?
Wait, did he watch people on TV?
Yeah, on TV. This is 8 years ago. Who had he been watching?
I'm guessing like Tiger Woods. I don't know a lot about golf.
Yeah, Tiger Woods. So he watched Tiger Woods videos. Exactly what he did. You know, he says, you know, when people come to see you, she says, well, you know, how do they react to you? He says, most of them don't believe it. They think I'm lying, but they see me on TV and I have this, and they're just amazed. He says he goes home and he watches Tiger Woods videos over and over and over again. So Bandura's theory in action, if you will. So there has to be some perceived similarity in age, gender, status, and so forth. Again, Christian has, you know, the same path in effect, or aspects of it. He might have other things of why he first got into the master's program that might be similar and so forth. So the model, everything, it depends, right? It depends on, you know, the situation and so forth. But, you know, there are certain things that we know. If we see other kids creating a company as teenagers, well, we might become entrepreneurial ourselves. We're at a school that might be emphasizing to have, you know, teenagers, you know, be maybe mentored to get apprenticed or start their own, you know, organization or institution or a little company. And other people might follow suit. So we need those role models out there. We need other kids. This is Tom Rees, my colleague, who normally comes as a guest in this class. He's building rockets with other high school kids, you know, so you need those, you know, those times in which you're bonding together and so forth and seeing other people do something. So, and then there's self-modeling. The highest degree of perceived similarity is videotaping yourself, or, you know, coding all your keystrokes and so forth and replaying them and replaying that video and then watching yourself. That has a great degree of impact as well. So not just watching others, but filming yourself and then replaying it and watching it later. So we see social cognitive theory in classrooms and athletics and behavior in the home and in the classroom and advertising. And we see it in television commercials and what we aspire to buy and what shampoos we get. And, you know, we see it in Sesame Street and other places. We see Mr. Rogers trying to promote kindness and, you know, doing good and so forth. And so I'll end there. We'll come back to self-efficacy beliefs next time and end with Bandura and some of the impact that Bandura has had worldwide. He's changed literacy rates in Mexico. He lowered AIDS in Africa. His work lowered AIDS cases in parts of Africa, Tanzania and South Africa and other countries through radio dramas, through soap operas and other means in which role models were embedded in those vignettes to display family planning or to display financial literacy or other things that they wanted. So anyways, Bandura is one who's been able to live long enough to see the impact of his theory, not just in a one-off study here or there, but in a societal way. And that's partly what makes Bandura distinct from other people that we read about this semester. We read different articles, and there might be great articles. You might want to meet the people at the end. That's all well and good. But here we've got somebody who's had a footprint in society, and other people have utilized his work around the world. And he's also a friend of IU and a friend of the School of Ed in particular, or was until he passed away last year. So I will end with that notion. Let's stop the recording and pick it back up next time. And week 12, part 1. Maria will be back for part 2, right?